Okay, so we begin. Well, I'm grateful to you all for joining in on this subject, which is a very vital issue to the present and the future of India and of the living conditions that we need for a happy and prosperous nation. Of course, there is also a big debate going on ever since the new government came in, and the debate centers around the question whether the government and the people should concentrate the economic issues and leave so-called controversial issues aside, or whether they should take those as well. Now, I have never been able to understand as to why there is that controversy, because nobody, let alone a culture, lives by money or food alone. The moment Homo sapiens have fixed their place of stay and ensured their food, they enter into activities which are not entirely economic, and they could be called cultural or religious or whatever. So life is not separated, and if a country has to survive, then it is both by economic prosperity, economic planning, as well as culture. As far as I know a little bit of Indian history, and here we have historians among us, India has invested more in culture, in arts, in performing arts, in architecture, in music, in dance, in philosophy, than any other recorded nation of the world. This is a society in which we had Varna ashram. Now, everybody talks about Varna in different ways, and it has been translated into the caste system. But nobody talks about ashram. The ashram dharma, the four ashramas: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyas. And you know that there is economic activity only in one of them. The other three are parasitical. So this is a society which, under law books and cultural practice, has not only declared but followed the idea that more than half of your life, ideally, whether that happens in an individual's life or not, but more than half of your life should be not for making money. And the Mahabharata, right in the beginning, in the Sambhav Parva, says that the highest of the ashram is not sannyas. Sannyasiyon ke pair zarur chhune chahiye. But they are not the highest, because they live on bhiksha. And they take bhiksha from whom? They take bhiksha from a grihastha. So the ideals of Indian economy have been not just in the air. And if India has been so prosperous through thousands of years, and you don't need any proof or economic data because it has been looted throughout history. It's only the prosperous who get looted. That's proof enough. And if it has been looted, if it has been prosperous, then the ashram concept has not been in vain. It has been a very successful one. So, I would suggest that one should get away from such silly controversies which are grist of the mill for NDTV and this TV and that TV and channel and all kinds of debate, because any kind of a cultural misadventure or any kind of a good cultural effort can either make your economy or unmake your economy. And hence, a great concentration on the so-called areas of life which are not devoted to economic effort is certainly very necessary. Having said that, I'm going to start the proper talk today by a Mangalacharan. This is in Sanskrit, 11th century text, a play called Hanuman Natak. And this is the Mangalacharan or the Nandi Vakya of the Natak. Yam Shaiva Samupasate Shiva iti Brahmeti Vedantino Bauddha Buddha iti Pramana Patavaha Karateti Nayyayika Arhan Nityat Jaina Shasana Rato Karmeti Mimamsakaha Soyam Vo Vidadhatu Vanchita Phalam Trailokya Natho Harihi. Now, what does this mean? It has a direct bearing on the topic which we are going to discuss, in which I would talk for another half an hour and then we'll have a discussion. He says, in the beginning of the play, when he pronounces this greeting and this benediction, that the Trailokya Natho Hari, the Lord of the three worlds, Hari, may fulfill all your desires. He is speaking to the audience who have come to watch the play. And who is this Hari? Who is this Vishnu? He is the one who is called Shiva by the Shaivas, Brahma by the Vedantis, Brahmeti Vedantino, Buddha by the Bauddhas, and the Naiyayic call him the doer or the Karta. That is the logicians, Nyaya, Sutra writers. And he is called Arahan, the 24 Arhats of the Jaina Shasana Rataha, Arahan Ityati. They call him that. Arahan Ityati Jaina Shasana Rato. And Karma here means Yagya, he is called Yagya by the Mimamsaka. He is the Trailokya Natho Hari, and he should fulfill all your desires. In other words, all kinds of desires, material and more than material. Now, this is 12th century, 11th, 12th century Hanuman Natak. In other words, it makes it very clear that Hari is not seen exclusively as Hari only. That he is seen manifesting in different ways, and there is no exclusion of how he is seen by others. If he is seen as Buddha, if he is seen as follower of as Yagya, for whom the Yagyas is to be done by Mimamsaka, Jains, so and so forth. In other words, the idea that when you worship, then you are worshipping the same supreme reality is neither a post-Vivekanand concoction, as it is sometimes said, that this is Neo-Vedanta. You know, for the past 20 years, I'm so amused when all our friends like Wendy Doniger and Michael Witzel and a whole lot of Indologists from American and British universities constantly talk of Neo-Vedanta, and they say that, well, this whole concept of creating a single divinity is something which has happened in the 19th century. Now, I'm giving you a text from 12th century. There are many other texts like this. If you go into them, you will find them. Of course, you can go very, very back, right to the Vedic sutras, etc., mantras, etc. But anyway, that is not the subject today. The subject today, as I put it in the title, religious conversion, is it a right, or is it mere rowdiness, or is it merely a ploy to disturb the social harmony, to disturb others, to make others feel insecure? What is it in reality? And I plan to go into the subject in terms of what is sometimes called the baggage of history. Because it cannot be seen as to what is religious conversion, cannot be seen entirely in terms of either the past 30, 40 or 50 or 60 years of Indian history, of the modern Indian state, or just even 19th century India. It cannot be seen just as what is often now called Hinduism and the Abrahamic religions. It has to be seen in a much wider context. You see, that is the problem. Either we see conversion as an Abrahamic effort, Jewish, Christian, and Islamic, as a proselytizing process, evangelism plus proselytizing. Either we see it that way, or we see it in the way which is very often called the modern Indian secularism, that the state shall have no religion and that people shall follow their own religious pursuits, and the state shall dispense a social order with what is called dharma nirapekshata, that is not at all looking at religion. I think this is where the problem has to be seen. Now, conversion means different things for different people. It has meant very different things within India throughout history. It has meant very different things for people who are sometimes called aborigines, by the civilized world. That is, people living in the tribal areas of Africa, Australia, South America. They also have a certain method of worship, certain concepts, certain ideas, which may not be formulated in terms of very specific written texts, but which, as a matter of practice, are a matter of life and death for them. So for them also, changing their entire way of life is a conversion. Conversion cannot be seen in modern discourse in terms of human rights. Because just as one man's meat is another man's poison, similarly one man's or one civilization's human right is denial of humanity to another civilization. And that is not something very difficult to understand, A few years ago, when I visited my son living in Houston, settled there, for the child they had, they made a child's room with a cot and everything. And the child would be put to bed there, but he would cry, and then they'll bring him and make the boy, sleep with them. So I asked my son, why on earth have you spent money and made a room? He said, this is the law. The law requires here that we provide a separate room and a proper cot and all these things here. And if it is not, then we are denying the child its right. I said, according to me, and that's how I brought you up, the child's right is to sleep between the father and the mother and to feel the flesh of the parents. And according to my aesthetics, and I can quote Abhinav Gupt from 11th century, the child who has slept and felt the mother's breast will be a better lover when he grows up than one who has slept in isolation. So here you see, it's not so easy to define human rights or rights of children. And hence, it is not so easy to define what is a religious right and what is the right and what is the right way. It is an extremely complicated affair. And I think when we look upon this whole situation and history in this manner, then we will come to see a very complicated discourse and a very complicated reason for conflict. In India, we are quite used to the idea of what we have called Sarva Dharma Sambhav. In other words, let there be harmony between all religions, but let us not talk about what is the religious practice of each denomination. The less you talk, the more tolerant your society will be. You see, this is exactly the discourse which has taken place. I'll come to this later towards the end of my talk as to why there is no discussion and teaching of anything religious right from school till the PhD level. But the idea is that we are not going to talk about the theological notions that different religious denominations carry. Now, I can't lay the sin at the door of just the Congress government, which has ruled for most of the time since independence. As a matter of fact, when I look at a good deal of history, I find that in India, there has been no serious critique of Islam. Can you point out a single book which may have been written, let us say in the 9th century, even 200 years or 150 years after the demolition that Muhammad bin Qasim did, or after the after the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate? There has been no critique. Various arguments are given as to why there has not been a critique. But when people were critiquing all kinds of theological positions, the Vedantic, the Vishishta, the Advaita, the Vishishta Advaita, the Madhvacharya, the Vaishnava, the Shaiva, and when we had these immense variety of discourse and development, we did not have a critique of Islam as to what is the Hindu point of view or the Indian point of view or the philosophic, whether it be Vaishnava or Shaiv point of view of Islamic ideas and Islamic notions. And when you go down to history, then perhaps the first book in the 19th century that you find which does some kind of an examination, although a rather sledgehammer type. The first book is by Dayanand Saraswati called Satyartha Prakash. It is in Satyartha Prakash that you find a comparative analysis of the Christian position, of the Islamic position, of the Vaishnav position, of the Shaiv, of the Sikhs, of the Buddhas, etc., including their philosophies and their practices. And then, of course, in the traditional styles, he demolishes their position and establishes his Arya Samaj idea. Now, the whole tradition was not doing this. And during the era of so-called great revival, the Indian Renaissance, this is the only book. Nobody followed it up. And somewhere along the line, people started saying that let there be no mutual analysis, because this will lead to, using the peculiar Indian word, communal disharmony. You know, the word communal means something else in British and American English. It means relating to the community, just as secularism means something else outside Nehru's India and the discourse here. The notion very early came in that let us not talk about it and let us not really discuss it as to what are the theological positions that have been taken. And hence, we were never able to understand and never able to discuss the right and wrong of Christianity, of Islam, and of various other sects which were discussed for hundreds of years within the so-called broad ambit of so-called Hinduism. So somewhere that kind of a discourse totally went out of practice, and people who could really do this are not to be found either in the, let us say, traditional centers of learning, let alone the modern universities which were started by the British, but even in the traditional centers of learning. I don't think that Baba Ramdev is at all thinking of starting a school of theological studies. It's only Ayurveda, or that Sri Ravi Shankar would be very much fascinated by that idea. I doubt if any mover and shaker in the field of Indian religious discourse, let alone a political party, would like to do that. And this is in stark contrast to what has been happening in our country for hundreds of years. Because this has been a country of Shastrartha, or Vad and Vivad. Vade vade jayate tattva bodha. It is not without a discussion and not without attacking another's position, attacking in the sense that you want to examine it, that you can really come to understand what is the reality. And as a result of that, what is the discourse that we have developed now? That every week somebody is grievously hurt here. Feelings of somebody else, some community, or feelings of some denomination are hurt. In other words, if you are going to handle each other with gloves all the time, then how will you understand that there are real human beings in flesh and blood left to touch. You will only be feeling people through gloves. You will never know what is there in flesh and blood. So, the case that I am building up is for a frank understanding and analysis of the nature of different religions. It is extremely easy to say that conversion is bad, that Mahatma Gandhi said that the missionaries should leave India, that Christian missionaries should not come here. It's very easy to say this, whether you agree or disagree. But to continue with this discourse is not going to lead us anywhere, because this is a non-intellectual position. If you look upon the thing deeply, it is a non-intellectual position. If you look at this whole discourse that my feelings are hurt, please don't say this, then this is a non-intellectual position. And the more you take it, some very hard, die-hard people will continue to get hurt and stop all kinds of discourse. Somebody will stop the discourse under the charge that what the speaker is saying is blasphemous. Or you would very easily start the discourse that what you are saying is a threat to the state. I am very glad that 66A has been struck down. Although we know that it was not made for religious reasons, so-called religious reasons, it was entirely to protect the ruling classes, the legislators and the members of parliament and the political classes. But then the disastrous effect it has, and it would have had on all kinds of discourse, and particularly theological discourse, is not just a matter of guess, but it is something very obvious. Now, at the same time, when you come down to study the political discourse, the theological discourse and the positions taken by different religious denominations, then you find that things have changed radically since the arrival of the British in India. For the very simple reason that within the so-called Indic religions, people were constantly changing from one religious denomination to another. Now, there is a cliche that Indians or Hindus never converted anybody. I simply ask them that what happened when people from Odisha went and established a state as far as Java and Sumatra, and they established either Shaivism or Buddhism. What kind of influence was that? I mean, is it not just a matter to quibble whether this was conversion or not? Yes, it may not have been done in the same manner as Christianity and Islam did their conversions. But the fact remains that religion, culture, and philosophical notions of India made a massive impact. Now, I have given you this reference because about this there can be no dispute. There can be a dispute whether there was a Buddhist influence on Christianity or not, or whether Plato and pre-Socratic philosophers were influenced by some kind of very early Vedanta, or that Plotinus was or was not influenced by Vedanta, otherwise he could not have made that kind of a philosophic system. That can be debatable, but at least On the eastern side, nothing is debatable. So, there has been an outreach from India to change the philosophic and cultural beliefs of other people. And therefore, simply to start the discourse that in India, because Hindus have never converted, because Hindus have never tried to influence others, therefore, Hinduism being a non-converting religion should not start the discourse at all with Christianity and Islam. You see, this is the net result of it. When you enter into this historical misinformation about your own history, then this is what you end up doing. Now, as I said, that till the 19th century or arrival of Christianity in a big way, of course Christianity had arrived much earlier, and I don't want to go into that debate whether the famous Apostle Thomas did really arrive or not. I mean, you can read authentic books on that, and as far as I know, there was no apostle who came to India. It's only a very different Thomas who in 3rd century came, because the apostles were not in a position to proselytize till Constantinos had accepted Christianity as a formal religion. There was no capacity for Christianity to go and influence others. Anyway, to come back to my theme, that within India, the change of denomination, that is from a Vedic becoming a Buddha, from a Buddha becoming a Jain, from a Jain becoming a Vaishnava, and vice versa, had been going on. And all these changes were a result of organized effort. You see, this is another big illusion we live in, that religion is a private affair, that it is a matter of conscience. I have not come across an equivalent of the word conscience in Sanskrit or in any early Indian language. In Hindi, what do you say? Antaratma ki awaaz. It's a ridiculous thing. Does Atma ever speak to anybody? We know, we hear that it spoke to Mahatma Gandhi, but there is no real deep explanation as to how the inner voice or the conscience speaks or how you decide. In the Indian philosophical systems, all discourse is out there. I am going to make a hypothesis about the nature of things. Either you prove that I am right or I am wrong. There is no question of deciding by listening to my inner voice. An inner voice has nothing to do with philosophic discourse. It has nothing to do with Shastras, it has nothing to do with theological understanding. And this is another illusion we live in. The individual will decide. No. Throughout Indian history, there have been great debates. People with certain theological positions, they have traveled, they have debated others, and they have, call it converted, influenced, changed people of different denominations to their own denominations. This has happened. To my mind, it is conversion. What you really have to understand is the content of the theological position of different religions. The issue is not whether you have a right to convert or not. And hence, should there be a law against conversion or not? And I'm not going to come up with flimsy arguments which a lawyer would just come up. Sorry, if there is a lawyer, I don't mean any disrespect. That there is the Article 25 which gives me the right to propagate my religion. And somebody would say, yes, yes, it gives you the right to propagate, but not to convert. This is all useless quibbling. That is why I said I'm going to talk from the perspective of history. What has happened in India and what has happened outside India. It's not a question whether the constitution gives me the right or not. This constitution is only 60 years old. India has not lived by this constitution for more than 60 years. India has lived much better by its shastras, by its tradition to debate, by its philosophical systems, by free and fair practice of converting people in hundreds and thousands. So to my mind, the very idea that there should be a law against conversion is suicidal. Now, having said this much, what was that nature of conversion? In India alone, you find that within a given family, the husband may be a Jain and the wife may be a Vaishnava. अब आजकल तो सारे आर्य समाजियों की पत्नियां मंदिर जाती हैं, नहीं जाती, जाती हैं, mostly, because it is much more attractive to go and worship in a temple than to do a yajna privately. But this is not the case with the modern situation. This has been the case in India in its history throughout. You must have heard that Chandragupta became a Jain monk at the end of his life, and he migrated to South India, and that is, some people think, was the origin of the Digambar sect in South, Shravanabelgola, etc. So the idea that you convert or you adopt another philosophic system, and when you've adopted another philosophic system, you did it openly. It was not like the newborn Christians today that you take Jesus in your heart only. You know, for this whole phenomena, I have been seeing it about 20 years. Several students of mine used to come and said, "Sir, you know, I have taken Jesus in my heart. Is there something wrong?" In the Indian system, it was very simple and very open. That if I am intellectually convinced, or if I am convinced that I have to change, then I would change. And individual conversion was there, and at the same time there was community conversion. People in hundreds and in big community, they would get converted. So you find that this has been the norm in India, but how did India survive with all this? And why is it that Europe could not survive with this kind of a situation? Or that Islam even to this day is not surviving in this situation? The Shia-Sunni wars are the most deadly wars that are going on even to this day. Now this is the biggest difference which we have to understand about the history of the Indian subcontinent. That a metaphysical choice, that a choice in terms of how I define the ultimate and how I change my life accordingly. Because then I would also change my conduct. I would also change my method of worship. I would also change, and openly I would also change my way of living. my vows, my vratas. It would not be a secret thing. So if I became, let's say, a Bishnoi, then I'll become vegetarian. And then I'll not kill animals and I'll plant trees. And if the whole community in that area has changed, then the community will follow that way of life and not let a Salman Khan kill a black deer and continue to fight. Now, this happened for the very simple reason that there were two cardinal decisions taken in the philosophic history of India very early. What are they? That the supreme, whatever you call it, Brahma, or by the different Vedic gods of the names, it can be worshipped either through words, or through an image, or a three-dimensional image, or through a sacrifice. Either a blood sacrifice or a non-blood sacrifice. And they would be legitimate systems accepted. And you would not deny anybody the right to follow that system. Now, once that agreement or once that harmony is created, and the evidence for that is as early as Taittiriya Upanishad or the whole Upanishadic system, you have a philosophic acceptance. And therefore, the most gruesome conflict which has engulfed the whole region of Middle East for the last nearly 3,000 years, ever since Moses departed into Egypt, was avoided in India. Namely, make an idol, a three-dimensional idol or a two-dimensional idol, or no idol, and it is equally valid. So this whole debate that there can be a picture of God or a picture of saint and you can kiss it, but it has to be two-dimensional. The moment you make it three-dimensional, then it becomes anathema. That's the proper word for it. You know, the Christian word for it, anathema. It's unacceptable. By the way, anathema in pure Greek means what? You will be amused to know what is the meaning of the word anathema. It means prasad. What the deity gives to me, what I give to the deity and take away. And when Christianity destroyed the Olympic religion, they turned the meaning upside down and said, no, this is anathema. Anyway, to continue. The other crucial decision was that God as I see it, God as I worship, God as I follow, whether I follow a prophet, whether I follow a text, this text or that text, is not the exclusive way. And hence within a family, you could have a Jain, you could have a Bodh. In the Indian system, there was the restriction of marrying within the Varna. But there was no restriction in marriage within a Sampradaya. So a Vaishnava could marry a Jain or a Bodh. And the child could become a non-Vaishnava. And this is the practice to this day. Now, we have castigated ourselves and we keep writhing about the caste system and about the lack of human right and the quote-unquote racism, as the British Parliament would like to call it, or at least some members of it, of the caste system. But we have never looked upon this massive liberty that we had. That within a kula, within a family, you could have people worshipping different deities, different philosophical systems, and you could have that way of life. I come to the next crucial point. What is the situation today? And how can you remedy it? And that would be virtually the last point that I'll make before I open the discussion to the House. Ever since independence, we saw to it, or the government saw to it, the policy makers, especially in the field of education, saw to it, that under the dispensation of the so-called secular state, religion should not be a topic for education at any level. Because religion was to be taught by the family. And you know what religion, what kind of religion families teach. And what kind of notions they give to children about the so-called religion of others. You see what has happened, the most disastrous thing which has happened under secularism is this. Then when you do not have religion as part of formal education, then whatever residual information about your own religion exists in the family is passed on. And along with it, all the incompleteness is passed on, and in 2 or 3 generations, you virtually become religiously ignorant. Totally ignorant, which is the state of affairs with the Indian young and old people today. So the consequence of this whole idea that religion should not be part of the school and college and university education has brought about this disaster. Now, in order to compound the crime, we made another provision. Whereas majority religion will not be taught at any level, minority religion will have the opportunity to be taught. And the minorities under Section 30 shall have the right to run their institutions, to manage them. Which means, practically speaking, Christians and Muslims will have the right. Then of course some others will say, well, because it is beneficial to be minority, because it gives us independence to run institutions and manage them, so let us become a minority. And of all people, the Neo-Vedantis, the Ramakrishna Mission made an application which the Supreme Court did not accept. After that, most of the Hindu denominations, so-called Hindu denominations like Lingayats and others, they said, there is no chance, so let us stay where we are. Then of course, very early, the Sikhs had been given the status of minority. I have never been able to understand that if Sikhs or Nanak Panthis can be a minority, then why Kabir Panthis cannot be, and why Dadu Panthis cannot be. Because philosophically they are all following the idea of Nirgun Brahma. And the Granth Sahib is full of the writings of non-Sikh, as a matter of fact. Those who cry hoarse about the status of a single book as a criteria for being declared as a separate religion should simply acknowledge the fact that so-called now a minority religion, Sikhism, does not have the bulk of its writing by Sikh gurus but by non-Sikh gurus. Please read the Granth Sahib. 20% of the content is by Sikh, 10 Sikh gurus. The rest is the non-Sikh. You know, the amount of misinformation that we are living in is phenomenal. And this all comes from our Anglophonic schools and colleges. Because we kept any kind of study of religious text outside the educative discourse. So here we have now a debate which rages constantly between the minority rights and the majority rights, not about the content of what the people are believing. And sometimes it seems to me, and I shall stop after making this point, sometimes it seems to me that the very reason that study of religious texts is kept out of schools and colleges from very early classes to the PhD level is so that people do not understand the religious convictions of others and question them. Just to think about them, just to question them is considered a dangerous situation, a threat to communal harmony. And we know that all it has done is to increase communal disharmony over all these years because it has generated ignorance. And it has generated, as I said, this culture of touchiness, that you have insulted my religion. There have been cases when I simply, in one of my lectures in Delhi University, said that the Greek custom of putting a scarf on your head or pallu over your head was followed only at the time of mourning. Otherwise, the Greek women didn't do it. And those who believe that parda came into India very early from the Greeks are mistaken. And I had a walkout from a Muslim professor, lady professor at that, who in any case was dressed in jeans and top. I mean, this is my own experience in a Delhi University college when I was giving a lecture. This is the kind of touchiness and lack of intellectual discourse under which we live. So my first suggestion, very practical suggestion, is to devise a fair and frank education policy that begins teaching of religions, that is all religious denomination, Hindu, Muslim, Islam, Parsi, Sikh, this, that, from very early. Of course, children have to be introduced to it in a very simple way, at middle level in a more complicated way, and at the university we do it in all the possible details. Now, you know, what is the consequence of our not studying our text? The consequence is that Mr. Guru Charan Das, who is sitting here so kindly, had to go to Chicago to study the Mahabharata. Is it not true, sir? Huh? No. He went to study it under Buchanan and some other people. Why? Because there are no department of religious studies in India. Because we are totally dependent for so-called Indological studies on American and British university. And we have some very intelligent people in our country who make massive donations to Harvard and Oxford for continuing that. The latest, is by Rohan Rohan Murthy to start the clay library. I have been crying hoarse for 3 years that why cannot it be done in India? And we are and all those who are contributing there can contribute here as well. They are most welcome here. They can be given Padma Shris as some of them have been given. Because we do not have the whole discourse in our universities. We are victims of a colonial discourse. And we constantly make these excuses that Hinduism is being misrepresented. Of course it is being misrepresented because it serves those who would like to do it for their purpose. It is their right if you have left the grounds for them. And they don't even want to enter a dialogue. And they don't care even if you ask and challenge them. When I went and challenged Wendy Doniger in an association of Asian studies in 2011, giving her 6 months notice on her book on Hinduism, she refused to come and attend my lecture. And it's only when the book was pulped here by the publisher under a legal proceeding that she created all kinds of fuss. And I wrote to her several times and, Madam, why didn't you have a good discourse in 2011 at Hawaii conference? The reason is very simple, that we have no people to discourse. We have no army of professors. There is no link between modern scholars and traditional scholars in India. There is no link between modern departments of academic study and those who know the proper methods of Shastrartha inherited from tradition. I think if we are serious about communal harmony, then we have to make a fresh education policy which takes study and dissemination of religious texts of the country, irrespective of the fact whether they are texts of minority or texts of majority. To my mind, that is not a criteria. As a matter of fact, I am very puzzled as to how can you make a distinction between majority and minority in terms of religion. Because if religion is good for 20 people, then it is good for 20,000 or 20 million. It is like food. If penicillin can cure one person, then it can cure millions. Where is the question of minority and majority in it? The whole concept that there will be some people on grounds of religion who would be considered a minority and some who would be considered a majority is false. It is philosophically untenable. Well, thank you so much for listening to me. Please raise your hands. And we will have questions. Make them very brief, because I want that many people should be able to participate.
Denominational splitting and hair splitting is going on now at the moment. I don't know where will you draw the line, because there are so many of these which are now emerging that you will actually confuse the poor child if you start, giving the child exposure to the entire range of all the sectarian and denominational kind of thinking, actually, which you find today, in our system, in our society. Thank you.
Well, very briefly, just to make a comment, you see, in quite a few places, we have to surmount them and we have to go along with them. And they can be done in a very attractive way. The biggest hurdle are the entrenched religions. Yes, there can be controversies, and I think there should be certain controversies because you cannot avoid them. But those need not be taken to the school level. At the school level, at the college level, all that you teach, all that you bring the information is about the fundamentals of major religions. You don't do a lot of hair splitting or teach, 10 positions of Advaita Vedanta or this or that. But the major religions of the world, of the country, you talk about. And I think if it is done in a proper manner, it is a big task. And yeah, we have time. Don't worry, we have lots of time. We can sit here as long as we please. The Habitat Center has given us the permission. So I think it can be done. The timidity is at the political level, in India especially. Because in India, we have handed over religious matters to clergy, to ulamas. And because there has been no single authority or a large authority for the Hindus, therefore the Hindu assertion vis-a-vis what you call VHP, vis-a-vis what you call certain other groups, if you look upon the ground situation, then the very problems that have been created are not by tradition by which India has lived. It is by modernity. Yeah, could we have your comments, sir?
I compliment you, Bharat, for monumental display of erudition. But let me just now, then people will accuse us of mutual backstabbing. My name is Joy Bhattacharya.
Yeah, take the mic.
No, I think I can be heard.
No, but you have to be recorded also.
Oh, I have to be recorded. Okay. Monumental display of erudition, knowledge, sagacity. I've added 2 more. So, now my point is, I think the original subject was conversion. I think you have, of course, rightly enlarged on it. My point is, the Indic culture and civilization, both, I take them together, are an endangered species. I know a lot of the people in the Delhi salon circles will jump at me. How come with 80% or 79% or maybe 77% of the population, how come you people are endangered? My point is, it's correct. Yes, it is. No. I think we're all aware, Bharat, of this.
No, but I didn't have the time to substantiate what you were saying through Article 26 to 30. It needs a special lecture.
Absolutely.
And what you say is entirely correct in the sense that it is disadvantageous to be a non-Muslim and a non-Christian in terms of these 4 articles.
Absolutely. And the
Now,
temptation,
yeah.
the temptation, as you rightly put it, for some individual Indic culture groups to jump the bandwagon and be classified. Now, to the greatest of my regret, there was a man called Ashok Sen, who was the minister, Nehru's law minister. He went and filed a petition in the Supreme Court saying that the Brahmo Samaj must be considered a minority institution. I almost felt like shooting them, because our family has been a Brahmo Samaj family for 160 years. We rescued Hinduism from the clutches of Islam and Christianity. They want to do it. The Ramakrishna Mission fortunately fell through. But the Ashok Sen petition is still pending. Now this is the sword that hangs over our heads. Now so therefore, it's a pending, as the Americans say, it's a clear and present danger.
Yeah, I agree with him because that's why I wanted a detailed analysis, and my answer has been given. that there is no need to make this distinction between minority and majority. Yeah.
I feel that, excuse me, I feel that the fact of one being a Hindu or Muslim is a matter of accident, because we are born into certain families which are either Hindu or Muslims, and we have no choice in this matter. My being a Hindu doesn't impinge on me in any way, either on my life or on my activities, because I'm also influenced by the cultural connotations of Islam and Christianity, because they have festivals which I also celebrate, and we have festivals which perhaps they may also be celebrating. So we look at it only as a religious phenomena, which it is not. We also have cultural configurations which we forget. And so far as Mahabharata is concerned, there are enough books on Mahabharata in India. I don't know why anyone has to go to Cambridge or Oxford, because when I was at school, I read the 6 volumes of Mahabharata which was published by Gita Press, Gorakhpur, and they're still lying in my house. So I don't think why people have to go abroad to study any religious book, which is already available in India.
A very, yes sir, but just one brief response to him. I'd say nothing about Gurcharan Das is going to study Mahabharata. That's a separate issue. You see, it is not just a matter of celebrating certain festivals or things together. In a modern world, we have to come out of the baggage of certain philosophic ideas. Yeah.
I have to be somewhere at 8 o'clock.
I was counting upon your response.
I was going to, but you have
No,
a lot
but
of hands. People waiting.
I'll take you just, please be here. I'll take you next. Yes. Just be here. Now, it is a very simple thing. You see, so many of us have beliefs which have to be adjusted to the present times. Let us have a frank discussion on it. Obama had to say, for certain political reasons may be true, that Hindus shall not fry in hell. He doesn't believe in that. Now, you have to look upon the situation that it makes no difference whether Obama says it or what Obama says. The difference will be made the day the Pope says it, or the Archbishop of Canterbury says it. So you see, these are issues which have to be brought into a sane, logical discourse if you want harmony in this world. Because philosophic notions have been changing. Could you, sir, make your comment, Gurcharan Das? Please take the mic.
Well, I certainly agree with the fact that each of us, I'm a liberal, and I believe that each of us has a right to believe what we want to believe, and we have a right to change what we want to believe in. So that's a freedom that we should enjoy in a free country. So this business of converting, etc., to me, is something that is should be a freedom that one should have. I think the problem of teaching religion especially in school, I would have a problem. At the university level, when people are grown up, etc., I would be all in favor of having religious studies taught in a secular context, which is to say that you're not converting. I'm not going to give you a lecture to convert you today to Islam or to convert you to Christianity. I would not approve of that. But I would approve of study. With children, it's a little more problematic in my mind because, in a vast country like ours, you have to depend on teachers in primary schools. And what if you got the wrong kind of person who was trying to teach religion in a way that I certainly may not approve of? So to me, that is the other thing that worries me. And that's why also I personally favor religion being a subject, something in the private space. I really don't like religion in the public space. We know maybe it's I'm a refugee and I have lived through partition and saw the horror of partition on my own family. And so I prefer the fact that religion should be something that's a private affair and not a public thing. And that's why I'm so glad that we are not like Pakistan, where we have a national religion. And that's where I stand. But before I conclude, I would like your reference, the Abhinav Gupta reference to the child, the mother, the drinking of the mother's milk. Could you send that to me? I think you have my email ID. If you could send that to me, I would appreciate it.
Yes. What about your...
Could I? Junjunwala ji. Yes, I'll take everybody. Don't worry, we have plenty of time. Yeah. One after another. Definitely. Don't worry. Yes, everybody, sir. Everybody.
My name is Junjunwala. As Professor Gupt has mentioned Ramakrishna Mission, and I happen to be the chairman of Ramakrishna Mission Delhi, I need to clarify a few things. You see, first, one has to understand as to what is religion. As far as I know, after all, we had Ramakrishna only 150 years back, and he used to say that first you see God face to face, and then talk of something else. So that was the highest stage of the religion, and one cannot reach the highest stage in the very beginning. You have to go very, very gradually. See, when you talk of conversion, see, one is a conversion at the level of intellect, at the level of heart. If you are highly impressed by a Ramakrishna, you possibly want to follow his methods. But unfortunately, what has happened is this, that in the last 2000 years of India, we are seeing an India which started declining. India's decline started much before Christ. And that is why Buddha and Mahavir came to revive the whole thing. While one is opposing conversion is because we have a history of 600 years of conversion in Islam by force. Either you convert to a Muslim or you will be killed. And then after the English came, if one sees the discussions in the parliament in 1757 to 1820, it has been very clearly discussed in the parliament that...
Which parliament? British parliament?
In the British parliament. In the British parliament, that the political subjugation of India is not our aim. Our aim is to make them Christians. All these have been discussed in the parliament. And as a matter of fact, there have been... East India Company has been opposing this because they knew the history of 1857. So East India Company was all against it. But the Christian missionaries were for this. And there was a voting in the parliament. And in the vote, the Christian missionaries won. And after that, the conversion started. And if my information is not wrong, there is a large foundation in America where they pay you $5,000 for every conversion you make in India. Whole of Africa has been made Christians. So the problem is this: nobody minds conversion. If I am an admirer of Christ, there is nothing wrong, but unfortunately, Christianity has left Christ. They are using Christ only for their political purposes. Today, unfortunately, we are so much influenced by politics that we cannot see religion. As a matter of fact, even Ramakrishna Mission, when they said that we are not Hindus, we are Ramakrishnites. You see, the big problem was this, that Ramakrishna Mission established with their origin in West Bengal. And when the communist government came in power, and when the legal advisor said that if you are Hindus, they may confiscate everything. So under the legal provision, they did it. But I tell you one thing, when the whole matter went to the chairman, Ramakrishna Mutt, the Swami Videswanand, when this matter came to them, then there was a big discussion. And the General Secretary, etc., they mentioned, sir, you should not dabble into these affairs. Leave it to the General Secretaries. When there is something spiritual, then you dabble. And then Videswanand said, "Yadi tumne morte hi chao to moro." And he threw the whole thing. You see, the whole problem is this, that these things are extremely complicated. After all, we have seen into the last 2,500 years, whoever came from outside, we were able to assimilate them. Even the Muslims were assimilated, but the Christians we could not assimilate. And the biggest, but the mystery is this, that even after so much of a decline, we have in the 19th century Aurobindo, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, etc. So it's a very complicated affair. It can't be discussed in half an hour.
Well, I agree. And my only very brief response is that Ramakrishna problems was there because of Article 30. That's a perpetual problem. And, other things, yes, when I propose a free and fair discussion and study, then this whole idea that my religion alone offers salvation comes into a public discourse. It comes into a wide discourse. You see, let us face the fact that Christianity doesn't believe in many of the things that it used to believe. I mean, it was illegal once to sell your daughter to a neighboring country according to the Bible. But nobody does that or has a right. You can see so many things which were practiced earlier, which are not practiced. And I think that within the history of any religious denomination, so many practices have been given up and many more need to be given up. It is only through a fair and free and open discussion that you are going to assert a pluralistic society and work for it. Yeah, can I take the question from the young people?
First of all, I'd like to just say that I don't believe that we can institutionalize the study of something like religion, and being a secular state, we very much hopefully establish that it should be a private affair. And when we say that we need to institutionalize the study of religious texts for a holistic understanding of religion, the question that arises is that who decides the content of the religious text that will be discussed, and who gives the interpretation? The very subjectivity, what are the regulation mechanisms? The very subjectivity of the interpretation of religious texts is dangerous. Another form of disharmony could emerge simply on the very subjectivity of how prone to interpretation religion is. And as you suggested that we need to teach all religions and leave religion as a choice to the student, I believe that we need to explain to the students religion as a separate entity in isolation, as a philosophy, what religion is in isolation, and then leave it to the choice of the person whether he or she, as another professor suggested, that the person could study religion at the university level and leave it to their choice whether or not they want to study religion or not. And then they could be taught of all the religious texts and leave it to their interpretation when the person is mature enough to interpret it.
I take your point.
Add to that, can I just...
See, this is the very old notion that teaching or talking about religion is only propagation of religion. India, if you might, my dear young girl, if you continue to live under this illusion, then you will stay in the 19th century, which India intellectually is doing. And for political convenience, the political parties are enforcing that situation on you. United States has started study of religions. We of course have had controversies on California Booker. See, there will be controversies, but it is not propagation of religion. Please learn to distinguish between propagation, that by teaching you, I am forcing you to become my religious denomination. No, we are teaching a sane and a simple comparative study of the principles of religion and making you acquainted with that. This is happening world over in societies which have come out of this very clear distinction between secularism and religious life. And they see no threat to it. This is being practiced, textbooks are being made everywhere now, and this situation is being dealt with. So unless we in India come out of that fear, which Gurcharan Das also expressed, it is not insurmountable. We're not asking you to make people Muslims or make people Hindus or make people, but why should my child not know what is the content of Quran? He will know about it very simply at the school level. At college level, he will get to study it. One day in my class, I asked a girl, she was called Holy Rise. Her name was Holy Rise, from somewhere in Assam. I asked her, my dear young girl, what is the meaning of your name, Holy Rise? She didn't know. Holy Rise is resurrection. Christ rising after being put on the cross. And she was a Christian. See, the levels of ignorance are terrible. And by making those levels of ignorance, you are pushing people into religious conflict. It is that what you have given today, not what you are fearing. Yeah. Could I have just his comment, then your comment? Just 1 minute. He's been raising his hand for a long time. We'll have opportunity for everybody. Where is the microphone? इनको दे दीजिए. इसके बाद आप ले लीजिए, फिर आप ले लीजिए. We'll have, and then you. We'll all have an opportunity.
I'm a law student, and my take on this entire conversion is basically that we should be taught how to embrace the other culture. We as Indians, we are very rich when it comes to culture, religion, and everything. So I'm talking about the basic crust over here. So we need to learn how to accept the other person, how to embrace it, and not to pinpoint at it whatever past events happened. Because at the end of the day, the people who had indulged in that event will be looked up, okay, they were of that sect, of that religion. So we have iconized everything to religion or any sort of perspective. So we need to move forward so that we embrace the other culture. Only that's the only thing to which our economy can grow. So everything boils down to that. We need to be taught how to love the other person. That's all. Thank you.
I agree with you. That's what when I say that let us study religions and discuss them, that's exactly what I'm arguing for.
Yes, sir. Sir, my name is Krishnan Tyagi. I was born here, I lived here, I was educated here. Can you hear me all? Yeah, okay. I'm married to a lady who is from Christian background. Her ancestors came from Ireland and they were living in Britain for a long time. I was married in a church, but I have never felt that I'm out of the cold, ever. Yeah, I've never been. And you know, most of my relatives from my wife are from Christian background, they're whites, you know, Muslim background, or Irish background, or English background. Yeah, okay. Let me tell you that in the West, in the UK I can say, no one is afraid of discussing and teaching English religions and all that. Yeah? My son, both sons have learned about Christianity, about Islam, about Hinduism in the schools itself. However, it is different, and I'm sure you mean that. We don't, when I expect that, I think, because I want to talk very good, sir, very good talk. You know, when we have religious education schools, it means actually introducing children to basic tenets of these religions. That's what it means. Yeah, not hiding things under the carpet. And actually, it is very important that we shouldn't run away from discussing things. In India, in the name of secularism, this subject is very related to that. The religious conversion is very much related to secularism. In India, in the name of secularism, we treat religion as a sacred cow. And I come from Hindu background. If I criticize my ancestor, if my Brahmanism, the casteism, you know, the theory of reincarnation, rebirth, if I criticize that, I'm a progressive person. I'm a progressive person. But I dare not talk about Christianity. I dare not talk about Islam. This is such a shallow thing. The Muslim community in this country and Christian community in this country has to understand this, that they have the right to practice their religion. But other minorities within minorities have the right to practice their self-right. Shias have the right, as much the right as the Sunnis have. Salman Rushdie had as much right to speak on religion or religious practices as much any mullah. Thus, the Sulaiman Nasreen had as much right. Only that the true secularism. So actually, if we look at the definition of secularism, the guy who gave the definition, George Jacob Holyoake. Read the definition. You can go and read on the internet today itself. Yeah? The way we practice secularism in this country is totally opposed to that. Nitish Kumar and all other people, कभी तिलक लगाना पड़ता है, कभी टोपी पहननी पड़ती है. That is their secularism. It's shallow secularism. It is not secularism. It is obscurantism. So actually challenging. Really, we should teach. We should learn about religion, and we should be ruthless about it. We should not give in to these things. It is really because we don't want to tell, particularly the moment it comes to minority religions. So, particularly Islam and Christian, we are so afraid. Well, this is such a fascist system, you know, and we cannot talk about it. So, it is very necessary that we should not have any boundaries.
Yes, sir.
We shouldn't have any boundaries. Yeah. Thank you.
I think there's just one.
Just young boys. He wants to ask a question, please.
Young boy.
Okay, young boy, what is the question? Quickly give your question.
Okay.
And your name.
Give your name.
We'll come to you, don't worry.
My name is Hari and I study in 7th. I think your viewpoint on saying that religion should be taught in school is very correct, because we have studied democracy in civics and they talk about communalism and all that. So if they're talking about communalism, what is wrong in talking about religion? My question is that when people say that religion is a very touchy subject and everything, then communalism should also be avoided.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think this is one of the most brilliant questions. And I congratulate this young boy for putting something which I think some of the most experienced academics could not have done it so succinctly.
And the grandmother, I suppose.
Yes. I am Indubala.
The mother.
No, retired principal, grandmother.
Grandmother. Congratulate the grandmother.
Yes.
See, I
Indeed,
totally
madam.
agree with you that religion can be taught in schools, and the way we think the teachers will misinterpret is totally wrong, I tell you. Unless a teacher is very strongly fanatic, and in most of our schools, at least in Delhi, leaving so-called your minority schools, they are all very open-minded. And when we come to the idea of Hindu schools, I should say that we people are very open-minded, ready to receive any kind of criticism and be tolerant and patient. And if you give the type of text in the hands of teachers and give a little guidelines, I think there's nothing wrong in learning about religions. As a child, having studied in a Catholic institution, we were given moral instructions. The other Christians used to go for Catholic doctrine. And nobody stopped us from learning Hindu culture or Hindu religion. And most important of all is, we must know that our civilization is not a dead civilization, ours is a living civilization. We have learned a lot about Greek civilization and Roman civilization which have died. The modern Rome or modern Greece or modern Babylon has nothing to do with its ancient civilization. We should be proud of saying that we have continued to be a living citizen since the times of Vedas. In such situations, why not give all these details to our young children? Let them go through it, let them analyze, logically think. We need not sermonize them, but we can give a knowledge about it. We should not keep them away from the rich heritage, the culture, civilization, Vedantas, all that we have. Why should we deprive our younger generations from all these things, when other religions are ready to give, almost impose? Unless you learn it, you are not going to be promoted into the next class. Why should that be there? So,
well, thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
Well,
सर मुझे कुछ करेक्ट करना है दरअसल आपने कुछ बोला था कि लोग चले जाएंगे वो फायदा नहीं कोई नहीं चलेगा misinformation sir my request is you have given a piece of misinformation to the people just a minute please आप बोलने दो
I appreciate very much your scholarly analysis and the conclusion, the thought-provoking conclusion you presented. What is happening in our country is that there is a lot of prejudice in the area of religion. In all communities, I would say, maybe more or less degrees. And secondly, also misunderstanding about secularism. Even French secularism, where they don't allow religious symbols in the public sphere, there is a lot of teaching of religion. And in India, we have gone even beyond that, and we have arrested religious training in the educational institutions, which is a violation of the genius of our country. And this is the root of the problem, that this religious education, I would say, public discourse, starting in the school, college, university should become made compulsory. This is really the crux of the problem. This is the way out of clearing up this confusion. And another thing, a problem is a myth or misunderstanding or illusion is religion is a private affair. Every human being, every human being is an individual and a social being. How can you make a religion only a private affair? Religion also is a public affair. Because we have understood religion as a private affair, well, religion doesn't produce values in public life. Religion is not reflected in our public life. When you go drive on the road, when you behave in the parks and public places, the religion is not reflected, only in rituals and rites. Religion is not a private affair, it's a private and social, individual and social, public affair also. Then only ethical values will be practiced in public life. And unfortunately, what happens in the religious sector is also this, that the major portion of the religion is taken care of by people who have no clear idea of religion. Only they are sentimental and emotional about it, and they are entertaining with that. And the elite section also, I see a good portion of the elite section have also moving out of this religious sector, because they are not attracted by what is happening in the religious sector. So they turn to be declaring atheists. So many people whom I know personally. This is not the solution of the thing. Atheist means not that they are against the core of the core principles, but because they don't agree with what is happening in the religious sector. But the elite, the scholarly forum has to come out in clearing up this mess and not allowing the illiterate religious guys to have their way. And I think the elite has to play a great role in this area in clearing up the mess and the confusion in the country, and education is the key to this. Thank you very much, sir.
I entirely agree. And on this, when some of these controversies erupted last year and were discussed on the channels, like should Hindus worship Sai Baba or not, I tried to contact so many channels. And I said, why don't you call scholars instead of just people with long beards? But this is the misuse which is going on, and I agree with you that all this mess has to be cleared by a patient and a meticulous effort to bring the knowledge of various religious beliefs to the children as well as to the educated. All right,
I will introduce myself. I am Dr. M.D. Thomas.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now the gentleman with the cap is very anxious to make a comment.
नहीं, मुझे जो कहना है वो कहना जरूरी था, खास तौर से शुरू में, इसलिए कि कुछ आपने कहा गुरु ग्रंथ साहब के बारे में, which is not true, sir. गुरु ग्रंथ साहब के बारे में आपने कहा कि 20% कंपोजिशन जो है गुरुज के हैं और 80% बाहर से हैं. मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट ये करना चाहता हूँ, क्लैरिफाई करना चाहता हूँ कि इट इज अदर वे राउंड. गुरु ग्रंथ साहब में प्लीज फर्स्ट लेट मी कंप्लीट हियर. गुरु ग्रंथ साहब में 80% हीम्स गुरु से हैं, गुरु द्वारा रचित हैं, और 20% जो है बाहर से हैं. बाहर जो है 52 सेंट से दिए गए हैं. गुरु ग्रंथ साहब की रचना ऐसे की गई है कि जिस गुरु ने जिस हीम को रचना की है उसमें मोहल्ला बोला गया है, मोहल्ला पहला, मोहल्ला दूसरा, मोहल्ला ऐसे. तो 80% जो है वो गुरु से रचित है, 20% ही बाहर से 52 सेंट से लिए गए हैं. पर्पज ये था कि टू यूनाइट दी people of those days beliefs, religious beliefs of those times. And the beginning first, the very opening of Guru Granth Sahib is Ek Onkar Satnam. Ek Onkar means God is one. लेकिन अच्छा, दूसरी बात ये आपने की कि कबीर नानक पंथी बोला. नानक पंथी नाम का कोई धर्म नहीं है. कबीर पंथी जो है आपने बोला, कबीर पंथी के बारे में मुझे कोई राय नहीं देनी है, लेकिन नानक पंथी नाम का कोई धर्म नहीं है, सिख धर्म है. और गुरु नानक देव जी ने हिंदू धर्म रिनाउंस करके सिख धर्म की को फाउंड किया. उसमें 10 गुरुज हैं. गुरु नानक देव जी अकेले गुरुज नहीं है, उसमें फॉलोड बाय अनदर 9 गुरुज. एंड देन गुरु ग्रंथ साहब, इसको हम अपना लास्टिंग गुरु मानते हैं. जहाँ तक सवाल है, आपने इस रिलीजियस स्टडी को अभी इंट्रोड्यूस करने के बारे में बोला है. मेरे व्यूज जो हैं गुरु चरणदास जी वाले हैं. मैं इस बात का, मेरा ख्याल है कि इसको मिसयूज ज्यादा किया जाएगा, यूज कम किया जाएगा. और सबसे बड़ा रिलीजन आज की तारीख में है, वो है, मैं समझता हूँ, इंडिया. लेट अस टीच पीपल इंडिया. इन इंडिया लेट अस टीच पीपल व्हाट्स इंडिया. Whether anybody is Muslim, Hindu, it doesn't matter, I tell you. Hinduism, Muslim, Islam, Jainism, I tell you, all this doesn't matter. Diversity हमारे यहाँ इतनी ज़्यादा है कि let us teach people Indianism, India. Please.
Okay, thank you.
And Constitution,
there are others who have to speak.
Okay.
And let us, let us
Constitution.
observe, please. Let us observe.
I stop it here. I stop.
Yeah.
My question is just an addition. It is just an addition, so let me please.
I'll allow you to speak now, but I just have to go one by one, and then we can come back. If you are willing to sit, I can sit here till 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. So please don't be over anxious. I'll disperse when you say. I'll continue as long as you are. It's very nice. Yeah. Anyway, please.
Yeah. So I completely believe that religion has a lot of positivity that we need to accept, we need to imbibe. That is completely agreeable. Okay. Firstly, I would like to point out that currently, taking Islam for an example, currently in Islam there are 5,000 sects and subsects which believe that every one of them is right. Okay? The Quran says that before the day of judgment, before the day of judgment, before you attain salvation, there will be 50,000 sects which would exist on this earth, out of which only one will attain salvation. Okay? So the fact is that where do you get to the agreement of what is right? I'll just point out the example that he said. Like you initially said something else about Sikhism, he corrected you, he had a different interpretation. Interpretation is a very, very essential and a very important part of religion which you cannot ignore. Like everybody here has been pointing out examples of countries like USA, etc. I would like to point out an example, though it's not really connected to India, but the example of Iraq and Syria. Over there, religion is being taught in schools. They are being taught Islam, and who are they being taught under, and what is the product of it? You can see that we have the Islamic State of Syria and Iraq. There is a reason why we need to separate religion and state, because I am completely agreeing that religion is very rational, but where does that rationality come? Because according to me, my religion is different. According to you, my religion is different. So where do you find that one common ground? And how will you do that when you have 550 sects existing within Islam itself, which I cannot find out a solution to? Please address it.
Now, a very brief answer. First of all, as I said, that this very question, which is right and which is wrong, is not the primary state. When we are talking of certain basic tenets of religion, then whether it is Islam or whether it is Vedic tradition or whether it is Christianity, we know that there are certain basic things. And we also know that there are lots of denominations. So we are talking of introducing the simple and the basic things and making people knowledgeable. Now, once people start discussing at a higher level, then the discourse will take place of itself. Then people will also come together. Why do you think only negatively that we will enter into a Shia-Sunni war as it is happening in Iraq and Iran? We will also have certain positive developments. After all, there was a time when Christian women were made to dress just as ISIS wants the women to be dressed. Till 18th century, till almost 16th century, all over Europe, women were dressed this way. You could just see their hand and their faces. So Christianity underwent a big change. It is a positive development. So there will be positive developments also, and that cannot happen unless we address ourselves to the problem. Yes, there will be problems of certain clashes, but those, if you are going to take care of how to make roads, No, this is your lack of optimism. I'm sorry to say that this is entirely your defeatist mind. And this is not what an intellectual and a young intellectual like you should think. You should think positively, that you will be able to surmount the problem. Yes, indeed. Yes. You see, all the issues, but they have been surmounted. Now for past 20 years, in US, in Britain, in France, in Spain, in Greece, texts have been formulated, and that education process has started. It can start in India as well. Of course, you will have to work with many problems.
Unless you discuss it, that you said religion is rational. Actually, I'm surprised to hear that. How do you say religion is rational? I did not say it's irrational. It is rational. Essentially. I'm exactly saying I'm saying actually the opposite. So, No, actually, how do you say religion is irrational? And the most irrational thing is religion. No, I'm saying that. No, listen. Unless you discuss it. No. Listen. What Dr. is saying, unless you discuss in schools and colleges, etc., discuss publicly, irrationality of religion will not come out. Actually, why are you hiding under the carpet? It should be allowed to be discussed in schools. There are 22% people in the US who believe that Jesus is going to come and bring salvation to the world. And another 25% are sure that he will come out in the next 50 years, he will come out of the clouds and he will, take the humanity to salvation. And similarly with Hinduism and other religions. There is so many rationality there. And if you don't want to discuss it, if you don't introduce it in schools and colleges and other public platforms, then you will not see all that irrationality. And when talking that Shia Sunni example, the fact is, as these examples, these provisions show, minority, so-called minority religions are taught here anyway. What you are actually is taught, like so what Dr. Gupt possibly saying, that so-called majority religions should also be taught. That's what he's saying. Shia, Sunni, Christianity, all these things have been taught anyway. No, not you. In their own religious institutions, they have been taught anyway. And they're being taught by mullahs and all that again. And
the basic issue is, first of all, not teaching. Secondly, that what is being taught is being taught exactly the way you don't want it to be taught. That is, it is being taught by sectarian people under the title of minority rights. For instance, the moment you want to find out what is the content of a madrasa, it is interpreted as an infringement on the rights of madrasa. Now this is a problem which we have created. Once the tenets of Islam are openly taught, they are openly taught within schools which are not so-called minority schools, then everybody will know what is being taught and what is not being taught. And the same will apply to Christianity or Vaishnavism or Hinduism or any other sect. I think the challenge is to come up with a certain modern and a contemporary interpretation of our religious challenges. And that is where the problem lies. Now I thank you all for coming, and I bring this. Is there one more question? Okay, there are two more questions. So आप बोल दीजिए, फिर आप बोल दीजिए.
Sir, it's really a very knowledgeable discussion that's going on, no doubt about that. I'm really very happy to be here. The thing is, now everybody is a different opinion. That was the main, I think, cause of the meeting, that they should all express their opinions. Now religion, teaching religion or not religion, of course that is who will put the bell in the cat's neck, that is the thing. Now religion in ancient India, as I understand, was much more, advanced and much more open than what we see now is. It was never taught in the content of only worshipping. It was in the content of dharma and religion. Religion as a worship or religion as a dharma. Dharma means your right towards humanity, your right towards yourself, your right towards society. That was what the Vedas, they describe it. That is how it has been continued, and for millions of years or centuries, we perceive Vedas have no age. So from that, if we point out that the Vedas were since the beginning of the earth. So since Hindu religion was, it came very late. Hindu religion as a religion. The religion was a dharma, that I think, if I'm not correct. So I don't know, maybe you're a scholar if you can. But same way, why can't we bring that sense of teaching right now again into our curriculums? Why not there will be a moral science which teaches all the religions in the way the religion should be taught, not a way like Iran and Iraq, they are fighting ISI. They are exaggerations that they are being taught. that all other are kafirs and you have to see that. That not. The thing as a human being. So if we can bring that change in definitely our country, which has ignored it for, I think, first 600-700 years under the Mughals and then 200 years under the British and now under the Congress. We completely ignored that fact. So thank you, sir.
So on what you were saying as well on the question of teaching morals, as you said, it's if you want to teach religion in education and about the basic principles are about morals. Why just not teach them morals instead of about religions? I agree with the fact that religion should be taught in schools, but if you're only talking about basic principles of morality and ethics, why just not teach them moral sciences? Second, another question would be, can someone really be converted, as we talk is about conversion? So in terms of their identity, yes, as technically someone can be converted into Hindu or Muslim, but in terms of cultural aspects, in terms of where they live geographically and what they do, those things that culture is also an aspect of their identity as a religion, right? And if someone in Kerala is a farmer and like as someone said, I think Gulshan said that culture is an aspect, and that the fact that they practice some the religions, traditions that they practice may be similar, right? Someone practicing Christian religions, traditions as well as Hindu traditions might be similar. So can someone really be converted in that sense if you practice that?
Okay, now a very brief answer, because this is the last question and the last comment, and thank you so much for the patience. You see, morality is defined, or ethics or ethiki has been defined under certain major systems of thought. In terms of religion, under Christian systems, Islamic systems, under Indian systems of different. So if you are going to talk about morality, how people have thought of what is moral, you will offer a greater variety of morality. For instance, if you are going to talk about ahimsa in the context of the Jain denomination, then you will see a broader and a deeper application of ahimsa. If you will think of in terms of the doctrine of love in the context of Christianity, then you will see a bigger and a more pervasive interpretation of love. That is the advantage of teaching it as part of religion and not just as part of morals or morality. Well, I thank everybody for coming, so kind of you, and I look forward to your attendance in my next stop on a equally exciting subject. Thank you very much.